All right, guys, sorry about the delay on getting in here. We were on a different meeting, had some technical difficulties, but we're in now, and we're ready to do this webinar. Promise the next time it's going to go a whole lot smoother. Can everyone hear me all right? If you just go into the chat or ask a question, it will pop up and just let me know if you guys can even hear me. Right here, there we go. Get this all set up. Where is chat? There we go. All right. So if everyone can hear me loud and clear, loud and clear. Thanks, Randy. All right, guys. So the big thing we're going to talk about for the version 31, the start of this webinar series that we're doing here, is the user interface, which for any of you guys who have version 31 already know pretty much what's new or have seen the user interface all the way pretty much already. So for those of you that don't, if you're still using version 30, this is a big change for the entire system. But yeah, the user interface. So right here, you guys can all see the screen good. Let's go. What's going on here? Okay. So let's get started here. So the user interface has changed completely from the last time we did a user interface. We've started off by really going through and trying to find all the categories that we can squeeze together and make into kind of one thing at a time. Anthony, you can't hear me. See if your speakers are on. I don't know. That's can't hear me. All right, give me 1 second, guys. All right, there we go. Yeah, we can hear you. Can hear fine. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to keep going. Anthony, if you can't hear me, I guess there's nothing to really do. All right, so the Create 2D tab. So everything that we have is now put into its own category. So we no longer have file menu. Well, we still have a file menu, but we no longer have a menu for points or lines or arcs or any of that kind of stuff. It's now all been combined into a single feature. So when we go to the Create 2D tab, it contains everything that we want on the 2D tab. So basically everything that can create 2D geometry. And I'm going to start by saying it's creating 2D geometry when we're talking about this. A lot of people look at this list and they start thinking, why is things like spun profile and maybe section view or even project curves on this menu or extract edges? It's because when you're using these functions, you're creating geometry. We're not modifying anything. So a lot of the features or every feature on here is working specifically with 2D geometry. When we go and look at something like the Create 3D menu, pretty much everything on this menu fits. It's a 3D menu. There's not much that really relies on 2D here. So most of this stuff fits. It makes all sense. But when you get into the utilities, this is the one where it was kind of, we had a lot of debates about where these specific icons should go, like things like the cleanup and optimize. Where should that be placed? And so we made the executive decision to put a lot of this stuff on the utilities menu. And the best way to think about the difference between these menus is Create 2D and Create 3D is all about what their names are. They're about creating the geometry. So when we're in these menus, we're always about making things. But when we get into the utilities, most of the functions in here are not creating geometry. They're modifying geometry that already exists. So we put it in a separate category. It's pretty well the same utilities menu we had in the previous versions as well, but you can always think about the utilities as geometry modification as opposed to geometry creation. So we have that whole thing. So we've tried to combine as many features as well. In the next upcoming webinars, I'm honestly not sure how many we have put up on the web or if they're all fully set up, but next week we'll have a much better idea of how to do all this stuff again. We have, over the next few webinars, we're going to be going through a lot of these new CAD features. So not too much CAD or CAM today, really, but just to show you kind of, we no longer have a menu that shows you all your options when you want points. Technically, we do. If you click the drop-down arrows below any of these features, you'll get the list of all the functions that works for. But now when we want to go and draw a point, if I just click on the point button, it gives me all the creation functionality or all the creation options that we have for that point. So the first one would be the point sketch or enter. And then next to that, we have the point from entities. We have the point incremental, the point on an entity, and then we have that point perpendicular function. So what's cool about this is our development team combined a lot of the functionality that we have inside the system. So when we go into point now, it's not just a point coordinate or a point sketch. It now does both. You'll also notice there's no snap functions on anything because now this can be used to snap as well. So you have a snap that you can use. You can use it for finding the arc center. Basically taking this one point function and making it work for all the other scenarios that the other functions, these other point functions, can't cover. So it is a little bit different, a little bit, I'd say, more user friendly, just because it makes things work a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster. You don't have to jump around so much. So the user interface here is pretty standard there. The next thing I want to talk about is let me turn on my BobCAM. The next thing I want to talk about is just the window docking. So one of the big things that we deal with just working with everyone is everyone's got a different setup for their screen. And there is no right or wrong way to set it up. I've slowly been converted because so many of you guys have your toolbars set up a specific way that I'm slowly starting to work closer and closer to how you guys actually have it set up. So what I have going on here is I have my entire CAM tree, BobCAD tree, everything on the left side of my screen. And then my posting, my layers, and my UCS are all the way on the right side of my screen. And so what I'm able to do is move these things around. And it's a big deal for us at BobCAD, and me especially. I move my toolbars all the time. And in the older system, it was such a hassle to move because if it didn't snap to the right position, it didn't jump to the right place. So it always made it kind of difficult. So what I'm able to do now is if I grab, say, this posting toolbar here, which the posting toolbar contains both all three of the posting, the UCS, and the layers. If I grab this, I'm able to now drag this around and place it wherever I want. So if you do have dual monitors, yeah, you can take that and throw it on the other monitor if you want. You can also remount them much easier than we've ever been able to before. So now what we'll see is there's these arrows. There's one here at the top, there's one down here at the bottom, one on the right here, and one on the left here, and then there's a big one in the middle that doesn't really do anything unless you drop a menu on it first. So all we have to do is hover over that icon, the arrow icon, and then release our mouse, and now that entire toolbar is sitting up above my CAD window and going to make it real hard for me to work. But if you do want to resize anything, so whether it's these menus from, say, left to right or like this one here where we're going up and down, it's all about where you place your cursor when you're trying to move them. So as I move in, we'll see that I have a normal cursor, and then when I hit a certain position, it's going to switch to that kind of double-ended pointed cursor. And that one, if I just click and hold, allows me to drag my windows bigger or smaller. Same with this one right here. I just have to find it. There's not really a line to find on this one. You just have to move it up, and you have it. So we could do that. We could also take this. I'm going to mount it back over here on the right side of the screen. We could also take all of the other toolbars that normally you can't get rid of, and we can move them onto there. So normally, like the BobArt tree, the BobArt page, it's where it sits, and there's no way to close it. It's just always going to be there, which it's whatever. If you don't use it, you don't use it. You don't click on it. So right here we have our BobArt tab. Let me widen this guy out a little bit. So right here we have our BobArt tab. Let's say I don't want my BobArt tab to be on my CAM CAD toolbar here. I want it over there on the layers, or I don't want it at all. If I don't want it at all I have to do is hit this little red X, which is tough for me to say because I've spent so many years telling you guys not to touch that little tiny X that now you can get rid of it. But you'll still have the same problem that everyone's had in the past, which is if you want to bring it back, you have to know how to bring it back. And the trick to bringing it back is the same as it's always been. Go to an empty part of the toolbar up top here, and then right-click, and then just turn the Art Manager back on, and it's going to pop back up in there. So you could turn it off. You could leave it off, especially for those of you, if you don't own BobArt, there's no reason to leave it on the screen all the time. So you could turn it off, and it'll stay off. Right down here, we can also move the toolbar from one to the other or make it its own. So if I grab the BobArt tab here and I drag it, now I have just the BobArt tab that I can drag around. So again, if I want, I can mount it really wherever I want. I could still mount it over here on the right side of the screen, and now I have double wide toolbars here, which is pretty cool. But we can also add it to this toolbar. So there's two ways to add it to a toolbar. When I hover over this, we'll see this icon in the middle pop up. Now, if I drop the BobArt on the center of that icon, it's going to add the BobArt toolbar to that list. So the BobArt's going to be added down here, so we'd have a 4-option bar. But if we look over here, if I go to the top the bottom, the left, or the right, we could also remount it. So if I mount it to the left, we're to the left of that toolbar, but it doesn't create a whole bigger space for us to use. Hold
Scott,
on.
101. Scott, 101.
Phone wasn't muted. 1 second, fellas. Let me mute that. There we go. All right. So right there we have our Bob Art Manager. So I can take this and pull it out. Now to put it back on the main toolbar again. So if I wanted to mount it, I'm going to put it back on this one. All we do is drag it and this time drop it on the middle one, and that's going to add it to the bottom of that toolbar. So you have very good ways, very easy ways to customize the user interface, kind of move it around however you want. Now, a big part that goes along with that is the user profiles now. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit and go into the backstage. I haven't really talked about it yet, but I'm going to come back and talk about this whole backstage area, which is the file toolbar here in a minute. But if we go down here to in the file, so you click on file, you can go down to user profile. So the user profile allows you to come in and create a user profile specifically either for you as a user, and maybe you have someone else who's using the system along with you. You guys can both create layouts. You can name the layouts, and the other person can't. Yeah, I mean, technically you can mess with each other's layouts, but normally you'll have your own layouts that you can use and separate from each other. So right here is the After Dark layout is what it's called. I believe this one shows up with the software because I haven't made that one. So I think the After Dark is going to show up. The BobCAD Classic is going to be more the classic mode. So if I double click on this one, it's going to move all my toolbars and relocate them to that view, so that mode. And so this is kind of the BobCAD Classic view. If we got our DataCAM Tree Manager toolbar here, and then our Layer UCS Post Managers right down here. So we could set it up as that BobCAD Classic. That's usually how I use it. But the best thing from this is if I want to change it, say I want my layers back on the other side, all I got to do is grab the whole thing, move it back over, drop it on the icon, and now I'm back to running my normal system here. So now if I want to make this one of my defaults, what I can do is I can go to File again, get my user profile, and I can start by saying I want to create a new layout. So I'll make a new layout, and right here we can actually click on it, and right down here we can rename it. So I'm going to call it Mike's second layout. All right, layout. All right, so that's Mike's second layout, and then click on it, and then right here I can say Save My Layout. So now it's going to override the layout that's currently there, which should be the same one, and we see Mike's second layout. So if I turn on the BobCAD Classic again, which should reset back to that one, and then I go back to the File, User Profile, and we'll go ahead and choose Mike's second layout and just double-click on it. Simple as that, and now my other layout's there. So if you did have a computer that you're sitting sharing with somebody else, if anyone is using a, if anyone's sharing a computer with a coworker or anything, now you guys can create your own custom kind of setup for the whole thing. One of the other cool things that goes along with the entire user profile, and one of my favorite things, is the themes. BobCAD in the past, we had different themes, but none of them were really that good looking. I mean, the kind of the standard was always the best looking one out of all of them, is what I'd say. Now we have a lot of cooler themes. So right now I'm running the Windows 7 theme, which definitely has good and bad parts to it. One of the minor inconveniences to it is when you do click on an object, like a checkbox inside certain functions, it's kind of tough to tell which one's selected because the gradient between selected and not selected isn't a fair, it's not much. So sometimes it's different. Like right here, if we look at the corner type option, you can see it, and it's definitely easier to see when you're in front of the monitor that it's showing on. But I have had some people say that some of the colors, they just seem to be a little too light, and it's a little tough to see. So if that's the case for you, when you go into this file bar, you have themes. And so you have an office blue, and so if I go ahead and say apply to this, it's going to apply that, and we'll see this is the office blue, which gray, I guess. But so you have a whole bar, or that's office black, sorry, office blue, you got office silver, and you just say apply, and it's going to put it in and change the colors. Doesn't move any toolbars around. It's pretty much going to keep everything else the same. It's just going to change this. Right here, while we're on the subject and talking about themes, is our selection mask toolbar. And we're going to definitely talk a lot more about this over the next upcoming few webinars, just because that right there is one of the best tools when it comes to selecting geometry. And I'd say it's probably one of the most overlooked functions when it comes to selecting geometry. So we'll talk more about that. But if we look at where the position is, right now it's over on the left. And I have mine on the left because for all the years I've been using BobCAD in every other version, that toolbar has been on the left, so that's where I know it to be at. But when you're going through here, if I go into the file, you can actually tell it where to put the selection mask toolbar or whether or not to even show it. So if you're one of those guys that you guys just don't use the selection mask, then you just turn it off. But you can also tell it to either be placed on the left side of the screen, you can put it on the right side of the screen, or you can put it down at the bottom of the screen, and that's going to save. So I'm going to turn on the expression dark. I'll put this thing over on the right. And for those of you that like a nice dark software, the expression dark is probably my favorite. Really gives it a good dark background. For me, that means it's easier on the eyes. Staring at a white background all day isn't my favorite thing to do. So a nice dark background here. I'm going to go change my background color here in a minute just to kind of get it to match. But there's our expression dark. It's a little too dark for when I do any of my recordings and stuff, so I'm going to use the Windows 7. But for those of you that like a nice dark program, you now can change it. Just go into the user profile, pick that expression dark, and then hit apply, and it's going to come up with a very cool, I just like the whole user interface for it. So there it is. So we've talked about window docking. Now let's talk about the backstage and just pretty much everything we have for the backstage. So the backstage is where we bring up this whole sub-menu. So we have our file, new, open, save, save as, all this kind of stuff. So it's pretty much the same file bar that we had in the past, but with a lot more options to it. So you have your file new, file open, file save, save as, merge, close, and then print. And just a heads up, there is a quick command for a lot of those, or for a few of those functions. So you do have shortcuts, so you don't have to click file, then get to new. There's how you create a new document. Right there, that little icon is how you'll pick a open an existing document. Next to that's the save for an active document, and then next to that's the save as. Right here's the undo and redo buttons. They are not gone from the system. I've had 3 guys call and ask me if we got rid of the undo buttons. We did not. I don't know where that information's coming from, if you've heard it. The undo buttons are still there. They're just in a little bit different position now. So they're always at the top of the screen. So back into the backstage with the file new, file open, all this kind of stuff. We've also added the ability to see file previews, which is a huge help for me because I'm one of the guys that's just bad at naming files all the time, and I don't really pay attention to what I'm naming my files sometimes, and it's a problem. But I can usually figure out what my part file looks like as soon as I see it for the first time. So the problem with that in the past was I'd have to open the file, see which file it was, determine if I was right or wrong, usually wrong, and then go back and find the proper file. But now we have previews. So you can actually go in and see a preview of the parts that you want to look at. So you can just click on these to see a preview of it. Now the preview is actually made the last time you save the part. So when you hit save, we basically take a screenshot of the part, and then we load that up every time we want to see every time you want to see a preview of that part. So if you do save a part and you're not zoomed in on the part, or maybe you're zoomed in too far as to where you can't tell really what it is, one of the best things to do is fit everything to the screen, kind of get it in a good view so you could see the part. If you want to show certain toolpaths, turn those toolpaths on as well. Then hit save. And then after you hit save, every time you reopen that file, it's going to open up with that screenshot on it, or what it's going to take whatever screenshot it was last saved with. So good way to think about it. We also changed the way you open files. So you're no longer using the old I can pull it up and show you, but now you actually have access to your quick access toolbars. You could do a search. In the past, you had no way of searching for files, and I've worked with a lot of you machinists before, and I've seen some of you guys naming files isn't the thing that you do. You know where the files might be, but the name of them is always off, or maybe you know the file, you just don't know where the heck you put it. You know it's somewhere on your desktop in a folder on your desktop. Well, now you can actually search for the file and then bring it right in, which is a huge, huge thing, just because it's so much easier to find certain file types. So there we go. We got the file preview. So back to the backstage here. Save, save as, merge. If you don't know, if you're pretty new to BobCAD altogether, merge is not an open option. It is and it isn't. Merge allows you to grab geometry from a part that you've already worked on and then bring it into a window that's currently open. So if I had two parts open, or if I had just an empty file open and I wanted to open up something into that file, I would merge it in. If you go to open, we're always going to open a new window and then open the object inside the window. In this case, with the merge, your window's already open. We're just grabbing the geometry and bringing it in. And I'll come back and talk about that a lot more, because a lot of you guys are working with parts that if you're drawing them in BobCAD, you get a CAD tree that's miles long, and that ends up causing a problem where your file just gets huge. So you end up with this ginormous file, and in a lot of cases, the file's way bigger than it ever needs to be, and that's because it's saving all of that CAD tree information as well. What's really cool about this is when you merge a file in, you can draw an entire part file. It might have a really large size to it, and then if you don't want to lose any layers or anything else that you've done, you can merge a file into a nice blank window. It'll drop the entire CAD tree, which means it shrinks the file, whatever the amount that CAD tree had to it. So it's going to make this file a whole lot smaller, a lot easier to work with, and you're going to have a nice fresh save with it. The other thing, when you do merge, it does not bring in toolpath at all. It just brings in the part and doesn't put any toolpath on the screen. Right here we have the close option. This is going to start closing the drawings. This isn't shutting down the software. This is just closing the drawing that's currently opened. Right here we have print. So you got kind of new print commands. Nothing really crazy about this. It's a little bit easier, a little bit more streamlined, not so old school as the old versions were. You have print, and right here you have your print setup, so you can see what printer you're printing to, just really anything you'd need for printing. Right here you have your print scale, so you can say drawing scale, fit 1:1, or fit all. And then down here is the line thickness. So if you print, and I would usually say do this as a test first, print it out, see what it's like with a line thickness of 1. And if it comes out when you print it, it seems really, really thin lined, you can bring that up. I usually run it about 5. And that seems to thicken up the lines good enough that, one, the printer does a pretty good job on it, and it's dark enough to see most of the text that I need. But definitely that's 100% a printer option. Like, that's going to depend on the printer. So definitely play around with that if you decide to do it. Not that you'll waste that much ink, but there we go. So there's the user profiles. Again, you can set up your own layouts, set up your themes and everything. Right down here we have our customizable shortcuts. So just like in the past, you can create shortcuts. And just a note, I get people that ask me this all the time. I'm going to fast forward for 1 second and just go, back down to the help down here. So I'm just going to click help, and I just want to go ahead and launch my help system because there is a function in here that if we go into the search and we search shortcuts, it should give us a page about shortcuts, or my Internet Explorer is still out of date. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, hold on. Let me update that. I'll show you guys the shortcuts help system thing. If it pops up today, I'll show it to you. Otherwise, I'll save it for next week. We'll do a little thing for shortcuts in there. But yeah, you can create shortcuts. There's a lot of shortcuts already built into BobCAD, and there's a lot of shortcuts that just pretty much every system, every computer, every Windows uses. One of those is just an example, like Control-A. If you hit those at the same time, really doesn't matter what program you're using, that's going to be a select all option. So you're going to select everything with a Control-A, and that works in BobCAD. That'll work inside Microsoft Word. It's a Windows function. So things like File New, if you wanted to create a new, Control-N, that's a Windows command. So what I'll get you guys for the next week, or if anyone's really interested, shoot me an email or ask the question in here. I could get you there's a list of pre-made shortcuts that are only specific to BobCAD. So it's things like the letter F, F as in Frank, F being fit all on your computer. So it's going to let you go in, you hit the letter F, and it fits everything to the screen. It'll be a list of all those. I haven't updated my Internet Explorer in a couple years, so it takes a minute to search. Otherwise, I'll get that information for you for the next webinar. If any of you guys have a question, give me a call. We'll talk about it. All right, so right here inside the help, also inside the help, so you have your help system just by going to the BobCAD help. We have the getting started. One of the best things that they did about the getting started is if you go in here, this is going to load up every time you launch the software, unless you plan ahead. And right down here at the bottom left-hand corner of this thing, there's a button that says Show at Startup. If that button is clicked on, this thing's going to pop up every time you launch software. If you turn it off, it doesn't pop up every single time every time you launch the software. So for me, This is just, I love having this thing not have to pop up for me because I rarely have to use it. A lot of times I'm dragging a file directly into BobCAD, so this thing ends up being in my way. Same thing with the tip of the day. The tip of the day is a little tip that pops up every time you launch the software. It's going to go through a little, like it says right here, the tip of the day will introduce you to many new and productive features of the BobCAD-CAM software. This is a lot of really good information in here, and I probably read through these every couple months, not for any reason other than they got little tips in them that sometimes you'll read them, and for the past 3 months I forgot that thing even existed, and then just a little reminder of it is enough to remind me that I could start using that I could use these functions again, and just have a really just kind of the shortcuts that I want to know about. It's really the shortcuts that you can take and the quick things that that make it seem like everything's running a lot better. So right here's just a checkbox. This is if you're connected to the internet and you're trying to launch the help system, by leaving this checked, it's going to launch the help system from the internet, which is what I got going on right now. So if I uncheck this and I say BobCAD help, it's not going to launch it inside of the internet. So we'll try and search it now and see if we can't find the shortcuts in here. There was a whole page for shortcuts. There it is, shortcut keys. So if you go off in the offline one or you have the proper Internet Explorer, you shouldn't have any issues with getting this thing up. So right here we have the shortcut keys. If I go ahead and open this up, what we'll see is all of the predetermined shortcuts that BobCAD has. So things like F1 and Shift F1 are going to load the help topics, and then just all the shortcuts that we have currently set up in the system. This is something I've had a lot of people ask for over the years, just where these shortcuts are. Down at the bottom, if you look at the related topics, it even has an option for how to create custom shortcut keys. So using the shortcuts command, actually creating your own custom shortcuts for these things. So go ahead and close that down. Don't need that help system no more. Right here's the activate license function. If you're using BobCAD at some point, you pretty much activated this license, so you can activate it via the internet, or you can activate it via email. The email is usually going to be more of an offline registration. You'll send us a file. We'll send you a file back that does all of it. So there we go. Right down here, transfer license. Now this has been around since version 30. 29 didn't have it like this. So version 30 was the first one that was able to transfer licenses. Basically what transferring licenses does is deactivates the computer that BobCAD's currently on. The big deal about this is if you've worked with us in the past or ever tried to move your software from one computer to another, you'd know that you have to call tech support and either talk to one of the gals that can modify it, or any of the tech guys that'll just jump on the phone and get it done real quick. That's how you used to have to transfer the license. Now, as long as you're connected to the internet and you know your license ID and your password, you can go in and say, I want to transfer automatically via the internet, and then hit next. And then you just tell it what license ID you want. Now, the reason I said you need your password is if you put this on a new computer, you'll need the password to re-register it. So all you have to do is click transfer. That's going to deactivate this computer. Then if you wanted to take that license ID and the password home with you for the weekend maybe, sit around on the couch and work on some BobCAD, you could. You just reactivate it on your home computer and be able to work it there. But the only problem with that is you have to make sure to transfer it back off the computer before you go back to work on Monday to get it back. Right down here is the show license status. So this just shows what is on your license at any given time. So it's what's selected on your license. Mine's full. And so you'll see what's on there. If you see something on there, you're supposed to have Bob Art or whatever function or whatever software you paid for, and it's not on there. Just get in touch with your salesman. Tell them you think there's a mistake going on with your license. They'll look into it and usually straighten it out pretty quick and easy. So other than that, the rest of these options are for network licenses. My computer, this one never leaves. This is a desktop, so I don't have to take it anywhere. So currently this one's running off a network license. That's just networked through the entire building here. But if you have a computer that you're going to travel with, a node lock license is going to be a better idea. Like on my laptop, I went with a node lock. If you do have a network license, if any of you guys do get one, or if you have one, you can also check out a roaming license, which is pretty cool. You could take your BobCAD off of the computer that it's registered to, but only for a certain amount of time. So you can check it out and say, I want to take it for 10 days, and then within you'll be fine to use the software for 10 days. But then after that 10 days is up, it's going to reset. You'll be in a demo mode until you hook it back up to the network and set it all up. So one of the other big changes for the the backstage here is we no longer have another page that you have to go through to find your settings. So your settings part and your settings default. So over here on the left, we have our settings part. And the difference between settings part and settings default, for any of you new guys out there that haven't heard me say this 1,000 times before, the difference is settings part only affects the window that's currently open. So I'm going to close out of this real fast. I'm going to jump over to this window. This window has geometry on it, so let's say it's a part that I've already started working on. When I go into the file and I go into the settings part, this is how I would change the background color for the file that I currently have open. So I'm able to go in and say, you know what, on this, I want a gray background. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to hit OK, and we'll see that that's going to turn to a gray background. But if I go into file and this time I go down to the settings default and I say I want to change my background color to black, when I say apply and hit OK, it doesn't update this drawing. And it's because the settings default doesn't mess with the drawing that's currently open. The settings default is for any drawing I do in the future. So if I open up a new window now, it's going to have a black background. If we want to change that, maybe someone sent me a file, and this will happen all the time, especially from tech support to you guys. If one of the guys here uses a white background or a black background, if you send a file to us and it's not a BobCAD file, it's going to open up with whatever settings we have. So if you send us a DXF or an IGES or a STEP or whatever, and we open it up on our end, when we send it back to you, the file's going to be saved with our settings. So if that did happen and someone sent you a file with a weird looking background color on it, you can go into the settings part and change your background to your normal background color, and that'll fix it. So that's a real quick way of changing it. So just also kind of another point to that is when you save a BobCAD file, it saves with your color selection settings. So any selection you make, any colors that you have set up are going to be set up when you send that file to somebody as well. So right here, I'm going to just go into the settings default and just talk about them for a minute. I got to leave this white because I'm still shooting videos. Right here, we have our background color, so I'm going to leave it white. Right here's the selection color. That's when we physically click on an object, but we're no longer touching the object. So if I click on a line and I move my cursor off that line, if the line is selected, it's going to show up as this bright red. So that's the selection color. If we're touching an object, so if we're about to click on a line, but we haven't clicked on it yet, or maybe we have clicked on it, we just haven't moved our cursor off of it yet, it's going to show up as the preview color. So that's just, again, if you're touching something, it's going to highlight as that color, not preview, I'm sorry, the highlight color. Right down here's our entity color. This is what we draw our geometry as. And then right below that, we have our preview color. So as we're creating geometry, basically, pretty much everything in the system that can show you a preview shows you a preview. So if you're trying to sketch, you're going to see a preview, a little orange line or point that pops up whenever we do anything that has a preview. Right below that, we have a conditional settings for certain features. So right here, we have our toolpath. And with this button, if you notice, it's this purplish whatever color. If I click it off, and if I was to hit apply now, when I create a toolpath, the toolpath color is not going to be any different than my entity color. The toolpath is going to show up as this dark blue, which for me is one of the most annoying things in the world because I can't see what's going on anymore. Right here, though, if I turn on the toolpath button, just click that button on, now whenever I calculate a toolpath, it's going to show up as this bright green. And on that bright green, it's just going to give me a different color for the toolpath. You could change that to whatever color you want. The only trick is just make sure that the toolpath button is clicked on. The dim text one right below it is clicked off. And that's the same thing. If I wanted all text and dimensions to show up as a different color, what I could do is come turn this on and pick whatever color I want. And that's going to be the color that that text shows up as. And then right down here, same thing, same kind of thing for the solids. If I do uncheck this, if any of these are unchecked, they use the entity color. So you want to leave them checked so that they do make you will get a difference in the colors whenever you create these objects. Right over here we have our axis XY. That's these guys right here. Some guys get real annoyed by those. I did too when I first started using BobCAD because I came from Autodesk and it didn't have any of those things. It's something that I could definitely say grows on you over time, and it doesn't take a lot of time. All it takes is really one part that doesn't show up anywhere near XYZ 0, just floating out in space somewhere. It really only takes one time of that before you realize, hey, it's kind of nice having this grid on because it gives me just something to compare to. When a part's floating out in space or there's no crosshairs on the screen, it becomes really difficult to even gauge how large that part is and where it's sitting because it's kind of just sitting in the middle of nowhere. So I like to leave them on, but completely up to you. We also have a button here for this little gnomon in the middle. That's that little XYZ arrow system. It's a gnomon, and you can turn that on and off just, again, by checking these buttons. Right down here's the shading and wireframe quality. This is basically the quality that you see your parts in. So some of you guys that got some of your 3-axis parts, as you zoom around and look into them and look at them, you might see some edges that if it's supposed to be round, it might look like it's made up of a bunch of straight lines. It's kind of annoying, kind of weird. It really isn't a problem, but a lot of times it can be confusing when you're going to try and pick an edge and it's a round edge and it looks squared off. It's usually the graphics quality. We don't run full graphical capabilities all the time because that would just be a major strain on your system. So what we have is just the shading and wireframe quality. This is just set about a quarter of the way up right now. That's our default. And if you bring it to the right, it's going to boost the quality. It's going to make everything look better. But there's a drawback to that. When things start loading faster or looking better, it can slow down how long it takes to load. You know, when you're doing a rotate, it could potentially take a little bit longer. The big note I have with using any of these quality options is really if you don't have a graphics card in your computer, if you're maybe running a laptop that doesn't have a graphics card, you're probably not going to mess with these too much. If you have a dedicated graphics card that's got, we recommend at least 1 gig of RAM built into the graphics card dedicated, but most of them you're going to find now are 2 gigs and up. If you got one of those that has its own dedicated video memory, yeah, go ahead and move these up. I have a graphics card in here, and this is still where I run my system at. Maybe once in a while when I go into the settings part, I'll turn it up to about 3/4 of the way, but unless I really need to, I usually don't max it out just because it can slow down a lot on the system. So over here, I just want to talk about the System tab real fast. This is where we find all our tolerances, snap increments, cam tolerances here, autosave. For those of you that haven't gotten into the mode of just hitting save as often as possible, autosave is here for you. So you go on, you say, I want to do an autosave. The minimum's 15 minutes. So the lowest you want to go with your save interval is going to be 15 minutes. You won't go any lower than that. It really depends on what you're working on. If you're doing a lot of 2D stuff where it's kind of quicker drawings, you're just doing a lot of them, I'd say save every 15 minutes. If you're doing bigger drawings where in a half hour's time you're really not getting that much stuff done, what I would do is I would use a 30-minute, 45-minute save interval. That way you're not screwing anything up in between. And then right down here we have some options. So enter equals tab. This is a huge one that I've stood behind people and watched them make this mistake. When you type in values inside of a box in BobCAD or really any Windows system, to get from one box to the next, you normally hit tab. All right. If you want to go back up, just a trick for you guys, if you hold shift and hit tab, it'll bring you back up. So tab goes down, shift tab goes up. Yeah, Randy. Yeah, hold on one second. All right, so Randy brought up something, just a timeout. I'll come right back to that. The autosave option, it can lock up the system, and it doesn't happen. I don't use autosave too often, but I do use it when I'm doing my personal stuff. If the system's busy with a calculation and something happens, usually it's going to wait for the calculation to be done. At least in the past, I think there was a build of BobCAD that the calculation could have screwed it up. I think they've taken care of that. Like I said, I don't use autosave too often. Never have I had the issue on my personal laptop when I do use autosave, but definitely better to be safe than sorry. I don't know. The best information I could give if you're worried about autosave potentially locking up during a calculation is turn autosave off and then, I don't know, get yourself a timer or something that goes off every few minutes to remind you to save, or just get it in your head to just save as often as possible, because there's nothing worse than working for 45 minutes on creating some surfaces, and then one tiny mistake of, I just did it yesterday, picking the wrong direction on a skin, and that, crashed the entire system, and there's nothing worse than that. So, yeah, I'd say best way to resolve it is just get used to saving. And that's what that little save icon's there for you, or Control S on your keyboard. Control S is in save, or Sierra. That's going to be a quick way to save as well. So yeah, Randy, be careful with it. But like I said, I think they handled it. I think it was a previous build that did that kind of thing. Not so much anymore. But all right, so back to this. Enter equals tab. The way that most Windows systems work is when we hit tab, we go from one box to the next box. So we can see it's just tabbing through there. Again, shift tab goes back up in case you wanted to know. Enter in BobCAD does not move from one box to the next. Enter creates geometry. So if you're in the middle of creating a piece of geometry, like a rectangle or an arc or what have you, and you designate how big it's going to be, and then you hit enter, it's going to create it. It's not going to wait. It's not going to update the preview. It's going to create whatever it is that you're currently on. So what this enter equals tab button does is it, just by checking it on, it converts when you hit enter to act like you hit tab. So instead of it creating the geometry, it's just going to advance you down one box. That one's a really good one. I've seen guys that some people their fingers automatically hit the enter key when they type in numbers. So they'll go type in 1/4 inch and they immediately hit enter. And this is one of the most helpful buttons if you're one of those guys, because it makes it so that when you do hit enter, it's not a bad thing. You're not creating geometry. It's just going to move you to the next box. Very good button there. Zoom to cursor, which should be on at all times. Means wherever I zoom in, when I roll my cursor forward and back, that's where I'm zooming to. And then right down here we have invert scroll wheel. This is a big one for any of you that use a different CAD system, or if you come from a different CAD-CAM system. If our zoom in and zoom out feels backwards to you, all you have to do is come in here and click invert scroll wheel, and that's going to switch it to the exact opposite. So ours is by default, when you pull the wheel back, it's going to zoom out. When you push forward, it zooms in. If yours is the opposite of that, or if you're used to a system that is the opposite of that, you can just click invert scroll wheel and do it that way. We also do support 3D mice, so you can use a 3D mouse. I only know of one that's on the market, and it's the 3D Connections. They got a few different kinds of them. Pretty much all you have to do with that one is plug it in and then launch BobCAD, and it's pretty well ready to go as soon as you do that. It's all set up. So other than that, we really haven't changed too much else inside the settings default here. The text, we haven't really added any new texts. We did change some options. So with your arrows, you can set up lengths and widths for your arrows and leaders and stuff. And now with the dimensions, you can default a BobCAD font for your dimension. In the previous versions, you were locked in with a Windows font. And so you didn't really have many options. So now you can go in and you can choose a BobCAD font, and you can tell it which one you want, just because if you remember, if you guys know, the fonts with the BobCAD fonts, they're all named this AFNT01, and then it goes down to 50, and then we have a few after that, but those aren't important. What's important is 1 through 9 on this list are all single line fonts, so they're really nice for engraving, where you just have a tool that comes in, makes a single pass, and moves on. 1 through 9 are in there. And then with the Windows fonts, there's the problem with the Windows fonts. There's not really any single line fonts out there that work really good. If you guys have some single line fonts that you found online or anything, I know about a few of them, the Cam Bam sticks and stuff. But if you guys find any good single line fonts online, send them to me. I love having single line fonts, especially if they look good. Yeah, let us know, because we want to. Well, just for me personally, I like to have them. So send them off to us right there. Right here's the point styles. This changes how you draw your points. And then when we're all done, we hit OK. Again, that was the settings default. So any changes you would have made inside that settings default, you wouldn't actually see any changes because it doesn't affect the window that's currently open. All you're going to see is the all you're going to see is the norm. So, all right, now I had more planned for today, but it actually kind of fits in a little bit better next week, because next week I'm going to start going through some of the CAD functions. So next week, what I planned on going through today a little bit was the construction geometry, some snap points, and then creating a custom UCS, which is going to be perfect for next week because that's my plan, is to go into some of that 2D geometry. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask a question. If you got anything, I'll be here for another minute or so, couple minutes. And yeah, if you have any questions, otherwise you guys have a good, happy Halloween. And make sure you check your kids' candy, get all the good stuff out of it before they get their hands on it. And yeah, you guys have a good day.